Do you remember when Donald Trump said this during his address to a joint session of Congress in March?
I'm fighting every day to reverse this damage and make America affordable again.
Fast forward almost 5 months, and he's done pretty much the exact opposite. And Americans are starting to take notice. A recent CBS News poll shows 70% of Americans think Donald Trump is not focusing enough on lowering prices. 64% disapprove of Donald Trump's handling of inflation. 60% oppose Donald Trump's tariffs on imports. Many U.S. businesses are still bracing for the full impact of Trump's tariffs. NPR reports, as President Donald Trump prepares to announce new tariff increases, the costs of his policies are starting to come into focus for a domestic manufacturing sector that depends on global supply chains, with a new analysis suggesting factory costs could increase by roughly 2% to 4.5%. Those increases will likely be passed on to Americans who are already feeling the squeeze because, well, the rent is too damn high. Fortune magazine reports U.S. median rent has risen from about $824 in 2008 to more than $1,300 in 2025. As rent has increased faster than wages, Americans are spending much more of their income on housing. On average, it now takes an entire week's worth of pay to afford monthly rent. And buying a home is becoming less and less attainable. The Wall Street Journal reports individual home buyers are largely locked out of the housing market as home prices continue to climb and interest rates remain stuck. But investors are buying and dominating the market. So far in 2025, investors who buy homes to flip or rent out have made up about 30% of purchases of both existing and newly built single-family homes, the highest share on record, according to property analytics firm Cotality, which started tracking the sales 14 years ago. That's where my next guest, Democratic Senator Lisa Blunt Rochester of Delaware, is trying to step in. A bipartisan housing package she's been working on was marked up in an executive session of the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee today.
I think about the fact that in my state, veterans have come to me and said, I'm concerned about losing my home. I think about the young couple who say, I can't afford to even think about buying a house. But more importantly, I think about kids that I saw in school auditoriums when I was a congressperson, second graders who said that they were concerned about homelessness. And when I asked why, they said, because I have a friend who lives in their car. That's what this is about to me.
Joining us now is Democratic Senator Lisa Blunt Rochester of Delaware. She is a member of the Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee and the Health Committee. Senator, thank you for being here. Tell us more about this bipartisan housing package.
Well, first of all, thank you, Jonathan. It is good to be with you. And I think, even starting with the issue of affordability that you just brought up, I mean, we hear across the country that housing is unattainable for many families. And this has been decades in the making. And so today, the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee, under the leadership of Senator Tim Scott and Ranking Member Elizabeth Warren, the whole committee voted on a major package of bills. 3 of my bills were included in that package. And as I said, this is really about the American people. And we want that dream to be not just reachable, but within real reach for them. And so we have bills that will deal with issues of increasing the supply of housing. That's one of the reasons why housing costs are so high, because you're competing for a limited number. One of the bills that I have, it creates something called to accelerate that, it creates these things called pattern books. Here's an example to deal with zoning issues. Mm-hmm. Yeah, to deal with zoning issues so that get a pre-approved plan. That way, you don't have to spend the time. You don't have to spend the money. We can increase that affordability. But this plan also, the package also dealt with issues of investing in affordable housing. It deals with cutting red tape. It deals with all the things that make us more competitive and able to build more housing in this country so that people can afford it. And this is across the board. And so really excited, because there aren't many times in your life where you get to do something and you say, this will make a big difference in people's lives. And that's what the introduction, this first step in this housing, the Road to Housing Act is all about.
Senator, last week, Donald Trump signed an executive order which removes homeless people from the streets of U.S. cities and put them in mental health institutions or drug treatment centers without their consent. What's your reaction to that?
Well, you know, I mean, I'm not surprised. We look at the actions that this administration has done that are really inhumane. I mean, you know, as you talked about affordability and tariffs, I think about the fact that while this administration is giving major tax breaks to billionaires and the ultra rich and corporations, with these tariffs, they're actually putting a tax on the American people. You know, we look at how folks have been treated, even the issue of cutting Medicaid. He said he wasn't going to cut Medicaid, wasn't going to touch it. They've actually gone about trying to rip Medicaid away from millions of Americans. He said he was going to do 90 deals on tariffs in 90 days. I don't think he's done 10. You know, and that's, I think, why this whole Epstein thing is also something that rings true for people, because it's, you know, promises made and promises broken. And the reality is, with the families and the individuals that you just talked about, these are real people. These are our neighbors, our cousins, our brothers. And so we're going to continue to fight and stand up for those individuals as we do our work in the Senate.
Senator, voters are giving the president poor marks on the economy. How is it feeling to people in Delaware?
Yeah, you know, people in Delaware, they come up to me and they tell me they're concerned. I mean, one of the reasons why I focused on housing was because it was one of the #1 issues that I heard up and down the state. But again, as we look at the lack of a really cohesive strategy for how we're dealing with issues of the economy, it's why we're seeing what we're seeing. You know, it's one thing to think that he's been able to keep prices, you know, stable. He said he was going to lower the cost of goods, and we're not seeing that. We're not seeing that in home building. We're not seeing that with the tariffs. We're not seeing that across the board. And so Delawareans are feeling it just like the rest of the country. And again, that's why we've got to come up with these things that are not just about what Donald Trump isn't doing, but what our vision is for the future. And to me, housing is one of those areas that touches everybody, no matter where you come from across this country, no matter what your persuasion. Housing is something that needs to be affordable, needs to be attainable, and is part of the American dream.